Hello everyone, I am the Seleni, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now get comfortable and relax. They say every small town has its secrets. Marshfield had more than most. Nestled in a valley surrounded by dense, ancient forest, the town had existed for nearly 2 centuries, passed over by progress and prosperity alike. To the rare traveler who happened upon it, Marshfield appeared quaint, perhaps charmingly outdated, its main street lined with brick buildings dating back to the 1920s. Many now empty or housing businesses that seem to persist through some mysterious economic alchemy, rather than actual customers. But Emma Caldwell wasn't a traveler. She was moving in, perhaps the first new resident Marshfield had seen in decades. The U-Haul trailer rattled behind her Honda as she drove slowly down Main Street, following the directions to her inherited property. Her great-aunt Judith had died 3 months ago, leaving Emma a house she'd never seen in a town she'd never visited. Under normal circumstances, Emma might have sold the place sight unseen, but normal had ceased to exist for her 6 months ago, when the publishing house she'd worked at for 8 years eliminated her position. With her savings dwindling and the New York apartment she could no longer afford, the inheritance had seemed like a lifeline, or at least a place to regroup while she figured out what came next. The GPS directed her to turn onto Willow Road, a narrow, tree-lined street at the northern edge of town. As she made the turn, she noticed how the ancient willows formed a canopy overhead, their drooping branches creating a tunnel effect that dimmed the afternoon sun. House number 1421 appeared on her right, a Victorian structure with faded blue paint, ornate white trim, and a wraparound porch that had seen better days. Emma pulled into the gravel driveway and turned off the engine, sitting for a moment to take it all in. Her great-aunt Judith had been the family eccentric according to Emma's mother, who rarely spoke of her elder sister. All Emma knew was that Judith had left their small Michigan hometown at 18 and eventually settled in Marshfield, where she'd lived alone until her death at 82. There had been no funeral Emma knew of, just a terse call from a lawyer, informing her of the inheritance. The house loomed before her, its windows like dark, vacant eyes. Something about it made Emma shiver despite the warm June afternoon. The property included several acres of wooded land behind the house, the trees so dense they blocked whatever lay beyond. As Emma exited her car, a creaking sound drew her attention to the porch, where a rocking chair moved gently in the breeze. "You must be Judith's niece." The voice startled Emma. She turned to see an elderly man standing at the edge of her driveway. He was tall and lean, with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed too bright in his weathered face. "Great niece, actually," Emma corrected, approaching him with an outstretched hand. "Emma Caldwell." "Walter Pruitt," he replied, briefly clasping her hand with cool, dry fingers. "I was your aunt's neighbor for 40 years. My place is just down there." He gestured vaguely down the road. "Judith mentioned you'd be coming." Emma frowned. "She did? I didn't even know about this place until after she died." Walter's expression remained impassive. "Judith knew many things before they happened." Before Emma could ask what he meant, he added, "You'll need help with unloading, I expect. I'll send my grandson over. He's strong enough to make quick work of it." Without waiting for a response, Walter turned and walked away, his gait surprisingly spry for a man who must have been in his 80s. Emma stood watching him go, a peculiar unease settling over her. She shook it off and retrieved the house keys from her purse. The key was old and ornate, turning stiffly in the lock. The door opened with a long, plaintive creak. The interior of the house was surprisingly well kept, if outdated. The foyer opened to a living room on the right and a formal dining room on the left, both furnished with heavy antiques that must have been at least a century old. Despite having been unoccupied for 3 months, there was no musty smell. Instead, a faint herbal scent hung in the air, reminiscent of dried lavender and something else Emma couldn't identify. She moved through the rooms slowly, cataloging her new possession. The kitchen had been modernized sometime in the 1970s, with avocado green appliances and dark wood cabinets. A narrow staircase led to the second floor, where she found 3 bedrooms and a bathroom with black and white tile and a clawfoot tub. The master bedroom overlooked the backyard and the woods beyond, its walls lined with bookshelves packed with old volumes. Emma ran her fingers along the spines, noting an extensive collection of folklore, mythology, and what appeared to be local history. One shelf held notebooks, dozens of them, bound in leather, their pages filled with her great-aunt's neat, precise handwriting. She pulled one out at random and opened it to find detailed accounts of the town's residents, observations about their habits, and strange symbols drawn in the margins. A knock at the door startled her, causing her to drop the notebook. It fell, open to a page with her own name written at the top, followed by today's date. Beneath it was written, "She arrives. The cycle begins again." Emma stared at the page, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. The knocking came again, more insistent. She closed the notebook and returned it to its place before heading downstairs, trying to rationalize what she'd seen. Perhaps her great-aunt had expected her to inherit the house eventually and had made notes accordingly. She opened the front door to find a young man in his early 20s with Walter's same piercing blue eyes set in a handsome tanned face. "Ms. Caldwell? I'm Liam Pruitt. Grandpa sent me to help with your things," he said, his voice deep and pleasant. "Thank you. That's very kind," Emma replied, still distracted by what she'd discovered upstairs. "Most of it is just boxes of clothes and books. The furniture came with the house." Liam nodded and followed her to the U-Haul. As they worked to unload her belongings, Emma found herself studying him surreptitiously. There was something oddly familiar about him, though she was certain they'd never met. "Have you lived in Marshfield long?" she asked as they carried boxes into the house. "All my life," Liam replied. "Most people here have. Not many come, and even fewer leave." There was an odd inflection to his words that made them sound almost like a warning. "What do people do here? For work, I mean. The town seems pretty quiet." Liam set down a heavy box in the living room. "Logging, mostly. There's a mill about 20 miles east. Some farm. Others commute to Millerton for office jobs. The rest," he trailed off with a shrug. "The rest find ways." Emma wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his expression discouraged further questions. They finished unloading in silence, and as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Liam declined her offer of payment. "We look after our neighbors here," he said simply. "There's a town meeting tomorrow night at the community hall. You should come. Everyone will want to meet you." After he left, Emma stood on the porch watching twilight settle over Marshfield. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of what might have been singing or chanting, carried on the evening breeze. The trees at the edge of her property seemed to sway in time with the sound, though there was no wind. Inside, she unpacked enough to make herself comfortable for the night. The house had no internet connection, and her cell service was spotty, at best, leaving her more isolated than she'd been in years. As she prepared for bed, she found herself drawn back to her great-aunt's notebooks. She selected one at random and took it to bed with her. This volume seemed to be a record of local folklore, tales of the forest that surrounded Marshfield and the entity some residents believed dwelled within it. According to Judith's notes, the original settlers had made a pact with something they'd encountered in the woods, ensuring the town's prosperity in exchange for certain observances. Emma read with growing unease about annual rituals that had once been performed at the spring equinox, involving offerings left at a stone altar deep in the forest. "The hollow demands its due," Judith had written. "When the offering is not made, it takes instead." The next page contained newspaper clippings about disappearances. Hikers, children, residents who had wandered too far into the woods and never returned. The most recent article was dated just 5 years ago, describing the search for a local teenager who had last been seen entering the forest on a dare. Emma closed the notebook, telling herself these were just local superstitions that her eccentric great-aunt had documented out of academic interest. Yet as she turned out the light, she could not shake the feeling that something was watching her from beyond the darkened window, something that had been waiting for her arrival. Sleep came fitfully, disturbed by dreams of shadowy figures moving among trees, and a voice that seemed to whisper her name from the depths of the forest. She woke several times in the night, convinced she'd heard footsteps on the porch or scratching at her window, only to find nothing when she looked. Morning brought pale sunshine and a knock at her door. A middle-aged woman with a severe bun and a basket of muffins introduced herself as Margaret Sherman, the town librarian. "We're all just so pleased to have Judith's family join us," Margaret said as she pressed the basket into Emma's hands. She was such a treasured part of our community. Her work was invaluable. "Her work?" Emma asked, inviting the woman in. "Oh, her documentation. Her keeping of the records," Margaret replied vaguely, her eyes scanning the living room. "I see you haven't disturbed her things. That's good. Some things are best left as they are." Emma offered coffee, which Margaret accepted, and they sat in the kitchen as the older woman provided a stream of information about Marshfield, which businesses were still open, which families had been there since the town's founding, and which areas Emma should avoid. "The woods, particularly," Margaret emphasized. "Beautiful as they are, it's easy to get turned around in there. People have been lost." Her eyes, Emma noticed, were the same piercing blue as Walter's and Liam's, though the woman's hair was deep, black without a trace of gray. "Are you related to the Pruitts?" Emma asked. Margaret's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "In Marshfield, Miss Caldwell, everyone is related if you go back far enough. The founding families intermarried quite extensively." She stood abruptly. "I should go. Don't forget the town meeting tonight, 8 o'clock at the hall on Main Street. Everyone will be expecting you." After Margaret left, Emma spent the day organizing her new home and exploring the town. Marshfield proved even smaller than she'd initially thought. Just a few blocks of businesses, most of them closed or operating on limited hours, surrounded by scattered residential streets. Everyone she passed seemed to know exactly who she was, greeting her by name though she'd never met them. All had the same invitation: come to the town meeting. At the town's small grocery store, Emma overheard 2 elderly women discussing her, in hushed tones. "It's her all right," one whispered. "Look at her eyes. Caldwell blood shows true." "Think she knows what she's in for?" the other replied. Both fell silent when they realized Emma could hear them. By evening, a sense of foreboding had settled over Emma, but curiosity propelled her toward the community hall. a stately brick building in the center of town. Inside, wooden folding chairs had been arranged in concentric circles, with a small raised platform in the center. Nearly every seat was filled by the time Emma arrived, and all conversation ceased as she entered. Walter Pruitt stood from his place on the platform and extended a hand toward her. "The niece of Judith Caldwell has returned to Marshfield," he announced formally. "Let us welcome her." The gathering responded with a synchronized greeting that sent chills down Emma's spine. The circle remains unbroken. Emma took the only empty seat, painfully aware of the eyes tracking her movements. Walter remained standing, his posture commanding, despite his age. For 2 centuries, Marshfield has endured while other towns withered. Our covenant has protected us, guided by the keepers who maintain our traditions. His gaze fixed on Emma. Judith Caldwell served as keeper for 64 years. Now, as the blood descendant, Emma Caldwell will take her place. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Emma stood up, confusion and alarm spreading through her. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you're talking about," she said. "I just inherited a house. I didn't agree to take on any position." Walter's expression remained serene. "The position is inherited with the house. Your great-aunt prepared everything for the transition. The notebooks contain all you need to know." "And if I refuse?" Emma asked, a defiant edge to her voice. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Walter's smile didn't reach his eyes. "No one refuses the calling, Miss Caldwell. The hollow must have its keeper, and the keeper must be of Caldwell blood. It has been this way since the founding." Margaret Sherman stood. "Perhaps we're overwhelming Miss Caldwell. She's only just arrived. Liam can explain her duties in more detail. After all, as her sentinel, that responsibility falls to him." Emma looked to Liam, who sat expressionless across the circle. "My what?" "Every keeper has a sentinel," Walter explained. "To protect, to assist, and if necessary, to ensure compliance with the covenant. The Pruitt family has provided the sentinels for generations." The meeting continued with town business that seemed surreally mundane after the bombshell they'd dropped on Emma. Discussions of road repairs, an upcoming festival, and the need for volunteers at the community garden. Throughout it all, Emma sat in a daze, aware of occasional glances in her direction, some concerned, others calculating. When the meeting concluded, Emma made for the door, intent on escape, but found Liam blocking her path. "Let me walk you home," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "We have much to discuss." The night air had grown chilly, and Emma wrapped her arms around herself as they walked in silence down the darkened streets. Only when they reached her property did Liam speak again. "You need to read the notebooks carefully," he said. "All of them. Especially the one with the black cover that Judith kept in her bedside drawer. The spring equinox is 8 months away. You need to be prepared." "Prepared for what?" Emma demanded. "What is this hollow everyone keeps talking about? What exactly am I supposed to be keeping?" Liam's eyes reflected the moonlight, giving them an eerie glow. "The hollow is the heart of the forest, where the veil is thin. Something lives there, something old. Our ancestors made a deal with it, protection and prosperity in exchange for worship and sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Emma repeated, her mouth going dry. "Not what you're thinking," Liam assured her, though his expression remained grave. "Not anymore, anyway. Now it's mostly symbolic. Offerings of food, drink, handcrafted items. But the rituals must be performed correctly, and only a Caldwell can lead them. Your bloodline was chosen by the entity itself. This is insane, Emma whispered. You're all insane. Liam stepped closer. Look around you, Emma. Have you noticed that despite the empty storefronts, no one in Marshfield seems to be struggling? Have you seen anyone sick or injured? Did you notice that despite the town's isolation, everyone has what they need? That's the Covenant at work. He pointed toward the dense trees behind her house. The hollow provides, but it requires acknowledgement, reverence. Emma backed away from him, toward her door. I'm not participating in some pagan ritual. You can find someone else to be your keeper. Liam's expression darkened. There is no one else. It must be you, and you will come to understand, one way or another. The dreams have already started, haven't they? Emma froze, remembering the unsettling visions that had disturbed her sleep. That's the hollow, reaching out to you, Liam continued. It knows you're here. It's been waiting. And it's not patient. He turned to leave, then paused. Read the notebooks, Emma, for your own sake. I'll check on you tomorrow. After he left, Emma rushed inside, double-locking the door behind her. Her rational mind insisted this was all elaborate nonsense, perhaps a shared delusion among the isolated. Townsfolk, or even some kind of cult her eccentric great-aunt had joined. Yet something deeper, more primal, whispered that Liam was telling the truth. She went upstairs to the master bedroom and opened the bedside drawer. Inside, just as Liam had said, was a black leather-bound notebook that looked older than the others, its pages yellowed and brittle. The first entry was dated 1823, written in a different hand than her great-aunt's. Today we made the pact with what dwells in the hollow. The harvest will be spared, and the sickness will pass over our homes. In return, we have promised what was asked. God forgive us, but we had no choice. The Caldwell line is bound now, until the end of days. Emma read deep into the night, the notebook detailing generations of Caldwell women who had served as keepers of the Covenant. The rituals had indeed evolved over time, from the disturbing blood sacrifices of the early years to more symbolic offerings in modern times. But one thing remained constant. The keeper could not leave Marshfield. Those who tried met with accidents, illness, or simply disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again. The final pages were written in her great-aunt's hand, addressed directly to Emma. My dearest Emma, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you have inherited both my home and my burden. I have watched you from afar all your life, knowing this day would come. The Hollow chose our bloodline long ago for reasons I never fully understood, but I have come to respect its power and its purpose. It is not malevolent exactly, but neither is it kind. It simply is, ancient and hungry for acknowledgement. You will resist at first. I did too. But the dreams will come, and the voice will grow louder until you cannot ignore it. The Hollow knows you, Emma. It has always known you would come. Accept your role, learn the rituals, and you can live a good life here. Fight, and you will discover why none have successfully broken the Covenant in 200 years. Trust Liam Pruitt. The Sentinel's duty is to the Keeper above all else. He will protect you, guide you, and if necessary, save you from yourself. I am sorry to place this burden on you, but blood is blood, and the Hollow demands its due. Emma closed the notebook, her hands shaking. She went to the window and looked out at the dark mass of trees behind the house. As she watched, she thought she could see movement among them. Not the natural swaying of branches, but something more purposeful, as if the forest itself was shifting, rearranging to get a better look at her. She awoke the next morning on top of her bed, still fully clothed, the black notebook open beside her. She had no memory of falling asleep. Outside, a dense fog had settled over Marshfield, obscuring the trees and muffling sounds. Emma showered and dressed quickly, determined to get into her car and drive away from this strange town and its disturbing beliefs. But when she went to the driveway, her car wouldn't start. The engine turned over repeatedly, but refused to catch. After several attempts, she popped the hood to find the spark plug wires had been removed. Going somewhere? Liam's voice came from behind her. Emma whirled around. Did you do this? He shook his head. Didn't have to. The Hollow doesn't want you to leave. This is kidnapping, Emma said, her voice rising. You can't force me to stay here. No one's forcing you, Liam replied calmly. You can leave on foot if you want. The main road is 5 miles that way. He pointed down Willow Road, opposite the direction of town. But I wouldn't recommend going through the woods. Not until you understand them better. Emma brushed past him and stormed back into the house, slamming the door. She grabbed her phone, intending to call for help, but there was no service. The landline in the kitchen emitted only a strange, pulsing tone when she picked it up. Through the window, she could see Liam still standing in her driveway, watching the house. Beyond him, at the edge of the property where the trees began, something moved in the fog. A tall, thin shadow that seemed to waver between solid and vapor. Emma rubbed her eyes, and when she looked again, the shadow was gone. But Liam had turned to face the woods, his posture alert, almost reverent. The day passed in a haze of fear and frustration. Emma tried repeatedly to get her car working, to no avail. She searched the house for another set of spark plug wires, finding instead more notebooks, jars of dried herbs and flowers, and containers filled with strange objects, bones, stones, with peculiar markings and locks of hair tied with red thread. By evening, hunger drove her toward town in search of food. The grocery store was closed despite the posted hours indicating it should be open. So was the small diner she'd noticed the day before. Main Street was deserted, the fog still hanging heavily in the air. As she turned to head back to the house, Emma noticed a light in the library window. She crossed the street and tried the door, which opened with a soft chime. Margaret Sherman looked up from the circulation desk, unsurprised. I thought you might come looking for answers, she said, gesturing for Emma to follow her. In a small office at the back of the building, Margaret unlocked a cabinet and removed a leather-bound volume similar to Judith's notebooks. The official History of Marshfield, she explained, placing it on a reading table. Not the sanitized version we show tourists, not that we get many. This is the true account. Emma sat and opened the book. It contained detailed records of the town's founding in 1823, when a group of settlers from Massachusetts had arrived to establish a logging community. Their first winter had been brutal, with disease and starvation claiming many lives. In desperation, the town's leaders had ventured deep into the forest, seeking help from rumors of an ancient presence that dwelled there. They found it in a hollow between two hills, a darkness that spoke directly into their minds, offering salvation in exchange. For regular tribute and worship, the entity had chosen Elizabeth Caldwell, the young daughter of the expedition's leader, as its conduit. The Caldwell women have always had the sight, Margaret said quietly. The ability to perceive what others cannot, to communicate with forces beyond our understanding. That's why the Hollow chose your bloodline. Emma looked up from the book. And what happens if there is no Caldwell woman? What if I refuse or die without an heir? Margaret's expression grew solemn. Then the covenant is broken. The Hollow reclaims everything it has given. The protection, the prosperity, the health of the land and its people. And it takes payment for the breach. She pointed to a page in the book that listed names, dozens of them, with dates spanning the town's history. These are the ones taken when the rituals were not properly observed or when a keeper faltered in her duties. This is why no one leaves Marshfield, Emma realized. You're all trapped here by this thing. Margaret smiled sadly. We don't see it as a trap. This is our home, protected and blessed. The outside world has its own horrors, war, poverty, disease. We've been spared much of that. Is that not worth something? Not if it's built on fear and sacrifice, Emma replied. All security comes at a price, Margaret said. You'll understand in time. She closed the book. You should return home. It's not safe to be out after dark, especially while you're still untrained. Emma left the library more confused than ever. The fog had thickened, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. She retraced her steps toward Willow Road, the street lamps casting eerie, diffused halos of light that did little to illuminate her path. Halfway home, Emma became aware of footsteps behind her. A soft padding sound like something moving with deliberate care. She quickened her pace, not daring to look back. The footsteps matched her speed, drawing closer. Cold air brushed the back of her neck, carrying that same herbal scent she'd noticed in the house, now tinged with something earthy and decayed. A voice whispered in her ear, so close she could feel the breath on her skin. Keeper. Emma broke into a run, terror propelling her through the fog. Behind her, the footsteps transformed into a rapid scuttling sound, inhuman and frantic. She reached her house and fumbled with the keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock the door. She slammed it shut behind her and collapsed against it, heart pounding. From outside came a sound like nails dragging across the wooden porch, followed by silence. When Emma finally gathered the courage to look through the peephole, she saw nothing but swirling fog. Yet she knew with absolute certainty that she was being watched, measured, assessed by something that had been waiting for her since before she was born. Sleep eluded her that night. Every creak of the old house, every whisper of wind through the trees set her nerves on edge. Around midnight, she heard singing coming from the direction of the forest, a low, harmonious chant in words she couldn't understand. Peering through her bedroom window, she saw flickering lights moving among the trees, as if a procession of torchbearers was weaving its way through the woods. By morning, exhaustion had dulled Emma's fear to a muted anxiety. She found herself drawn to her great-aunt's notebooks again, this time with a purpose. If she was truly trapped in Marshfield, at least temporarily, she needed to understand what she was dealing with. The notebooks detailed the rituals with meticulous precision, the words to be spoken, the offerings to be prepared, the specific locations within the forest where the ceremonies were to be performed. Some passages made her skin crawl, while others seemed almost beautiful in their reverence for the natural world and its hidden powers. A knock at the door interrupted her reading. She opened it to find a basket on the porch, containing freshly baked bread, jars of preserves, and a bottle of what appeared to be homemade wine. A note tucked among the items read simply, "From your neighbors, the Hollow provides." As the days passed, Emma fell into an uneasy routine. Each morning brought offerings on her porch, food, candles, bundles of herbs, sometimes small handcrafted items. Liam visited daily, gradually teaching her about the town's history and the duties she was expected to perform. Despite her initial resistance, Emma found herself absorbing the information, partly out of self-preservation, partly out of a growing curiosity she couldn't quite suppress. The dreams intensified, visions of the forest at night, of a clearing, where ancient stones formed a circle around a depression in the earth shaped like a perfect bowl. In these dreams, Emma knew exactly what to do, what words to speak, what offerings to present. She would awaken with the taste of unfamiliar words on her tongue and the sensation of having been somewhere else entirely while her body slept. One evening, a month after her arrival, Liam arrived with a small wooden box. "It's time," he said, placing it on the kitchen table. "The new moon rises tonight. You need to make your first offering." Emma eyed the box warily. "What's in there?" "Just herbs and a token. A silver coin that's been in your family for generations. Nothing excessive." He must have seen the apprehension in her face because he added, "Think of it as an introduction, a formal acknowledgement between you and the Hollow. Without it, the dreams will only get worse, and its attempts to communicate with you will become more physical." Emma shuddered, remembering the footsteps in the fog, the voice that had whispered in her ear, "And if I do this, it will leave me in peace." "Not exactly," Liam said carefully, "but it will recognize you as the keeper, and that offers certain protections. The Hollow doesn't harm its conduit. Just everyone else if the conduit fails," Emma muttered. Liam's face hardened. "You've read the histories. You know what happened in 1879 when Keeper Sarah Caldwell tried to break the covenant. 12 children disappeared into the forest in a single night. Is that what you want?" "Of course not," Emma snapped. "But this is all insane. I'm being asked to communicate with some entity that may just be a mass delusion or an elaborate hoax." "Do you truly believe that?" Liam asked quietly. After everything you've experienced since coming here, Emma wanted to say yes, to cling to rationality and skepticism. But the truth was, she had felt something watching her from the woods, had heard a voice that couldn't be explained away by wind or imagination. And there were the dreams, so vivid they left physical sensations behind. "I'll do this one ritual," she finally said, "but I'm not committing to anything beyond that." Liam nodded, relief evident in his posture. "That's all I ask. Tonight at midnight, at the edge of the forest behind your house, wear this." He placed a small silver pendant on the table, a circular design with a twisted pattern that made Emma's eyes hurt if she looked at it too long. That night, Emma stood at the forest's edge, the wooden box in her hands, the pendant cold against her skin. Liam waited several paces behind her, as he had explained the sentinel must never precede the keeper into the Hollow's domain. The night was unusually still, no breeze stirring the leaves, no insects chirping in the darkness. Emma took a deep breath and stepped forward, following a narrow path that seemed to materialize before her. illuminated by an ethereal phosphorescence that emanated from certain plants growing along its edges. The path led deeper into the forest than Emma had expected, twisting and turning until she was thoroughly disoriented. Yet some instinct, or perhaps something awakened by the dreams, guided her forward with increasing confidence. Finally, the path opened onto the clearing she had seen in her dreams, a perfect circle of smooth stones surrounding a depression in the earth. The air here felt different, charged with an energy that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. Emma knew what to do without being told. She approached the center of the clearing and knelt before the hollow in the ground. Opening the box, she removed the herbs, lavender, rosemary, and other plants she couldn't identify, and arranged them in a specific pattern. She placed the silver coin in the center of the arrangement. Words rose to her lips unbidden, in a language she had never studied yet somehow understood. An acknowledgement, an introduction, an acceptance of mutual obligation. As she spoke, the air around her grew dense, the darkness deepening until it seemed to have substance and weight. A presence materialized across from her, not a physical form, but a condensation of shadow and intent. A void in the shape of something vaguely human, but elongated and wrong in its proportions. It observed her with what felt like ancient, patient interest. "Keeper," it whispered, the word seeming to form directly in her mind, rather than in her ears. "You have returned to us." "I am not my great-aunt," Emma managed to say, fighting the instinct to flee. "I don't fully understand what you are or what you want." A sensation like cold fingers brushed against her consciousness. Understanding is not required, only service. Your blood knows, even if your mind does not. The shadow moved closer, enveloping her in its chill embrace. Emma felt it sifting through her memories, her fears, her desires, cataloging everything. It found with dispassionate thoroughness. "You wish to leave," it observed. "That is not possible. You are bound, as your ancestors were bound. The covenant must be honored." "And if I refuse?" Emma whispered. Images flooded her mind. The town, in ruins, its people wasting away from disease and hunger. Children vanishing one by one into the waiting darkness of the forest, and herself, withering from the inside out as something vital was slowly drained away. "The choice is always yours," the entity said, a hint of cruel amusement in its mental voice. "But the consequences are fixed." The shadow withdrew, coalescing, back into the formless darkness of the clearing. The herbs and coin were gone, accepted by whatever dwelled in the hollow. Emma felt simultaneously drained and energized, as if something had both taken and given energy in the same moment. Liam was waiting when she emerged from the forest, his expression anxious until he saw her face. "You've been accepted," he said, with evident relief. It wasn't a question. Emma nodded, unable to articulate the experience she'd just had. Something fundamental had shifted within her. A door opened that could never be fully closed again. She could feel the forest now, not just see it, could sense the flow of life and energy through the trees, the soil, the creatures that dwelled within, and beneath it all, the constant, watchful presence of the hollow. "What happens now?" she asked, as they walked back to the house. "Now you learn," Liam replied. "The equinox ritual is the most important of the year. You have 7 months to prepare." The days that followed took on a surreal quality. Emma found herself immersed in her great-aunt's world, studying the notebooks with growing comprehension, learning to identify the plants that grew in the carefully tended garden behind the house, each with its specific purpose in the various rituals required throughout the year. Liam became her constant companion, teaching her the history that couldn't be found in the written records, oral traditions passed down through generations of sentinels. She learned that the entity in the hollow was far older than human settlement in the region, that native tribes had given it wide berth, leaving offerings at a respectful distance but never attempting to communicate directly, as the founders of Marshfield had done. "They were wiser than our ancestors," Liam admitted one afternoon as they sorted herbs in the kitchen. "They understood that some powers are best left undisturbed. But our founders were desperate and arrogant, a dangerous combination." "Yet you continue to serve it," Emma observed. Liam's hands stilled. "We have no choice. Breaking the covenant now would destroy Marshfield completely, and..." He hesitated. "There are benefits. The Hollow has knowledge to offer, for those who know how to listen." Emma had begun to notice these benefits herself. Minor injuries healed with unusual speed. The produce from her garden grew faster and larger than seemed natural. And there were moments when she knew things she shouldn't. Where to find a lost item, when a storm was coming despite clear skies, what a neighbor was about to say before they spoke. Gradually, the other residents of Marshfield began to visit, bringing small problems for the keeper's attention. A child's persistent nightmares, a failing crop, recurring headaches that conventional medicine couldn't address. Following instructions in Judith's notebooks, Emma prepared remedies, sachets of herbs, tinctures, charms made from natural materials, always with the strange certainty that she was being guided by something beyond her own knowledge. Most disturbing were the moments when words came out of her mouth that she hadn't consciously formed. Advice, warnings, prophecies that left both her and the recipient shaken. In those moments, Emma knew she was not speaking alone, that something was using her as its voice in Marshfield. As summer turned to fall, Emma's resistance began to erode. She found a rhythm in her new life, a purpose in helping the townsfolk, even a grudging fascination with the ancient practices she was learning. The forest no longer seemed threatening but familiar, almost welcoming. She began to recognize subtle changes in its energy, how it responded to her moods, how certain areas would become more or less accessible depending on the cycles of the moon and her own mental state. And there was Liam. Their relationship had evolved from reluctant cooperation to something deeper, more complex. As sentinel and keeper, they were bound by tradition and duty, but Emma sensed there was more to his attentiveness than obligation. He had begun to look at her with an intensity that both unsettled and attracted her. One evening, as they walked back from the forest after a minor ritual to ensure a plentiful apple harvest, Emma finally asked the question that had been growing in her mind. The sentinel and the keeper, are they always just professional colleagues? Liam's step faltered momentarily. Not always, he admitted. Historically, many became more. Like married? Emma pressed. In most cases, yes. It's practical in many ways. The sentinel understands the keeper's burden as no one else can. And he paused, choosing his words carefully. The Caldwell line must continue for the covenant to remain stable. A keeper must have a daughter to succeed her. Emma stopped walking. So this is about breeding? Making sure the next generation of magical conduits is born? Liam flushed. That's a crude way to put it. There's more to it than that. The bond between sentinel and keeper strengthens both, enhances their connection to the hollow and its power. He stepped closer to her, and sometimes there are genuine feelings involved. His proximity made Emma's heart race, though whether from fear or attraction, she couldn't be sure. Before she could respond, a scream shattered the evening quiet, a child's voice, coming from the direction of the forest. They ran toward the sound, Emma following Liam as he veered off the main path onto a less traveled one. They found a young boy, perhaps 10 years old, huddled at the base of a tree, his face pale with terror. "Tyler," Liam said, kneeling beside the child. "What are you doing out here alone?" Dare," the boy stammered. "Billy dared me to touch the whispering stone." His wide eyes turned to Emma. "I saw it, Miss Caldwell. The shadow man. It reached for me." Emma felt ice form in her chest. "Where?" The boy pointed with a trembling finger deeper into the forest. "By the big rock that looks like a face. It knew my name." Liam lifted the boy. "I'll get him home. You should check the stone," Emma finished, already knowing what needed to be done. "I'll meet you back at the house." After they departed, Emma continued along the path, drawn by an unsettling certainty toward a formation of rocks she'd never seen before, but somehow knew how to find. The Whispering Stone stood in a small clearing, a tall, roughly humanoid shape, with a surface smooth on one side, as if worn by countless hands over centuries. As she approached, a familiar cold presence manifested beside her. "The child trespassed," the entity stated, its mental voice neither apologetic nor threatening, merely factual. "He came without offering or invitation." "He's just a boy," Emma said. "He meant no disrespect. It was a childish dare." Ignorance does not negate consequences. In earlier times, he would not have left the forest. Emma felt a surge of protective anger. Those days are past. The covenant has evolved, as you well know. The children of Marshfield are under my protection as keeper. The shadow seemed to consider this, its presence fluctuating like smoke in a breeze. "Your predecessors were less confrontational." "I'm not my great aunt," Emma replied, echoing her words from their first meeting. "I may be bound to this role, but I will define how I fulfill it." A sensation like cold laughter brushed against her mind. "Your defiance is interesting, but ultimately futile. The hollow shapes the keeper as much as the keeper serves the hollow. In time, you will understand." The presence receded, leaving Emma alone with the stone and the unsettling certainty that she had both won and lost something in the exchange. When she returned home, Liam was waiting on the porch, his expression grave. "Tyler's safe with his parents," he reported. "I gave them herbs for dreamless sleep. He'll need it tonight." Emma nodded, suddenly exhausted. The entity was testing boundaries, mine as much as the boys. It's still deciding what kind of keeper I'll be. Liam studied her face. "And what kind will you be, Emma?" "One that protects this town," she replied after a moment. "Even from its protector." As the equinox drew nearer, Emma's integration into her role accelerated. The townspeople now openly sought her counsel, brought her gifts, invited her to share meals in their homes. She learned their histories, their interconnections, the complex web of relationships that bound Marshfield's inhabitants together as surely as their shared secret bound them to the forest. she discovered that while most accepted the covenant as simply the way things were, a few, particularly among the younger generation, harbored resentment toward the restrictions it placed on their lives. These were the ones who tested the boundaries, venturing farther from town than was considered safe, talking of leaving despite the warnings. One such young woman was Lily Sherman, Margaret's niece, who visited Emma one rainy afternoon with a request that made her blood run cold. "I need to leave Marshfield," Lily said, her voice low but determined. "I've been accepted to a college in Boston. I want your blessing to go." Emma set down the tea she'd been preparing. "You know I don't have the power to exempt anyone from the covenant." "But you do," Lily insisted. "Aunt Margaret showed me passages in the old records. A keeper can grant temporary leave to individuals with certain conditions." "Your great-aunt did it 3 times during her tenure?" Emma frowned. She had read extensively in Judith's notebooks, but had found no mention of such exceptions. "What conditions?" "A blood oath to return by a specified date. A token to carry that binds the traveler to Marshfield. And," Lily hesitated, "an offering to the Hollow as compensation for the temporary absence." "What kind of offering?" Emma asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Something of equivalent value to what's being borrowed," Lily replied vaguely. "A life for a life," Emma translated. "Someone would have to agree to serve as hostage to the covenant while you're gone." Lily nodded, her expression pleading. "My boyfriend has agreed. He understands the risks." "Does he?" Emma asked sharply. "Does he understand that if you don't return, he'll be taken? That no one would be able to help him?" "I would return," Lily insisted. 4 years, that's all I'm asking. A chance to see something beyond these woods, to learn things I can bring back, to make Marshfield better." Emma saw the desperate hope in the younger woman's eyes and felt a painful empathy. How many Marshfield residents had harbored similar dreams over the generations, only to see them wither under the shadow of the covenant? "Let me research this," she said finally. "If such exceptions exist, there must be specific protocols. I won't risk your life or your boyfriend's without complete understanding." After Lily left, Emma went immediately to the hidden compartment in the library wall where her great-aunt had kept her most private writings. The panel slid open at her touch, revealing a slim volume bound in red leather that she had not examined before. Inside were accounts of the 3 exceptions Judith had granted. Young people permitted to leave temporarily for education or military service. Each had indeed required a volunteer to remain as surety, bound by blood oath to the covenant. 2 of the travelers had returned as promised. The third, a young man sent to fight in Vietnam, had never come back. His fiancée, who had served as his surety, disappeared into the forest on the day he was declared missing in action. The final page contained a warning in her great-aunt's hand. The exceptions extract a terrible price, not only from those directly involved, but from the keeper who grants them. The Hollow's trust, once betrayed, is slow to be regained. Choose wisely, Emma. That night, Emma dreamed of the Hollow in the forest. In the dream, she stood before the depression in the earth. But instead of being empty, it was filled with a dark liquid that reflected her face with perfect clarity. As she watched, her reflection changed, aging decades in moments, her features gradually transforming into those of her great-aunt Judith. The reflection spoke. The burden passes but never ends. The choices define the keeper, but the covenant defines the choices. Emma awoke with a start to find Liam sitting at the foot of her bed, watching her with concern. "You were calling out in your sleep," he explained, seeing her confusion. "I heard you from downstairs. I was dreaming of Judith," Emma said, sitting up. "And of choices." Liam's expression grew guarded. "Lily Sherman came to see you." "Word travels fast," Emma observed dryly. "There are no secrets in Marshfield, not from the Sentinel." He moved closer on the bed. "Emma, granting exceptions is dangerous. The balance is delicate, especially with a new keeper. So I should just tell her no? Condemn her to never experiencing anything beyond this town?" "We all make sacrifices for the Covenant," Liam said softly. "Some more than others." Emma studied his face. The sharp angles softened by the moonlight streaming through the window. The piercing blue eyes that seemed to see more than they should. "What sacrifices have you made, Liam?" He looked away. "The Pruitt line has served as sentinels since the beginning. We don't choose our path any more than the Caldwells choose theirs. My father was your great-aunt's sentinel. When she died, I knew my role would be to serve the next keeper." He hesitated. "To serve you." "And if you had a choice?" Emma pressed. "What would you choose?" Liam's gaze returned to her, intense and unwavering. "I would still choose this. I would choose you." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken words. Emma felt herself drawn toward him, some combination of the lateness of the hour, the lingering effect of the dream, and the genuine emotion in his voice breaking down her carefully maintained barriers. His kiss was gentle at first, then increasingly urgent, as if he'd been holding himself back for months and could no longer maintain restraint. Emma responded, with equal fervor, letting the heat of the moment wash away her doubts and reservations. Only when his hands began to move beneath her nightshirt did a sudden clarity break through the haze of desire. She pulled back, breathing heavily. "Is this part of the ritual too?" she asked, unable to keep the bitter edge from her voice. "Binding the keeper and sentinel in the most fundamental way?" Liam flinched as if she'd struck him. "No, this has nothing to do with duty or tradition." His voice was raw with emotion. "I've watched you fight against the Covenant while simultaneously embracing its power. I've seen your compassion for the people of this town, even as you resent the circumstances that brought you here. You're unlike any keeper before you. And I..." He broke off, shaking his head in frustration. "You what?" Emma whispered. "I love you," he said simply. "Not because you're the keeper, but despite it. Because you're Emma." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Emma felt something shift within her, a recognition of feelings she'd been denying since her arrival. "In Marshfield, stay," she said, reaching for his hand. "But not because of duty or tradition or the Covenant. Stay because we both choose it." The night that followed changed everything and nothing. Emma awoke in Liam's arms, momentarily content before the weight of her responsibilities reasserted itself. The equinox was 2 weeks away. Lily still awaited her decision. And beyond the window, the forest loomed, patient and watchful. In the days that followed, Emma immersed herself in preparations for the equinox ritual. According to the notebooks, this ceremony was crucial in maintaining the Covenant's strength through the coming winter. The entire town would participate, gathering at the edge of the forest to witness the Keeper's communion with the Hollow, followed by a feast that symbolized the sharing of blessings between the entity and the community. Emma worked alongside the town elders, directing preparations with a growing confidence that both pleased and unsettled her. Each day she found it easier to slip into her role as keeper, to access knowledge she shouldn't possess, to feel the subtle energies that flowed between the forest, the town, and herself. 2 days before the equinox, Emma made her decision about Lily. She called the young woman to the house and laid out the terms under which she would grant the exception. Sigh. Blood oath must be taken at the Whispering Stone on the dark moon, she explained, the words coming to her with uncomfortable ease. Your boyfriend must understand fully what he's agreeing to. If you don't return by the specified date, 4 years and not a day more, he will be claimed by the Hollow. Lily nodded solemnly. He understands. We both do. There's more, Emma continued. While you're away, you cannot speak of Marshfield or the Covenant to anyone. You must wear this at all times. She handed the young woman a pendant, similar to her own, but smaller, containing a fragment of stone from the Hollow. And you must perform a small ritual at each full moon, no matter where you are. She described the simple ceremony that would maintain Lily's connection to Marshfield. A few words spoken while holding the pendant. A drop of blood added to a mixture of specific herbs that Emma would provide in sufficient quantity for Lily's entire absence. Most importantly, Emma concluded, you must understand that this exception does not break your bond to the Covenant. You will feel the pull to return growing stronger as the deadline approaches. If you resist it, the consequences will be severe, not just for your boyfriend, but for you as well. Distance will not protect you. Lily's expression remained determined, despite the gravity of the warnings. I understand, Ms. Caldwell. And thank you. You don't know what this means to me. As the young woman left, Emma wondered if she had made the right choice, or if she had just condemned 2 young lives to tragedy. The Covenant's demands were absolute, its forgiveness limited. She could only hope that Lily's desire for education was stronger than whatever temptations the outside world might offer. The day of the equinox dawned clear and crisp, the forest ablaze with the first hints of autumn color. Emma spent the morning in meditation, following instructions in the most ancient of Judith's notebooks, preparing her mind to serve as vessel for whatever communication the Hollow wished to convey to the townspeople. As dusk approached, she dressed, in the ceremonial garments that had been prepared for her, a simple gown of undyed linen, embroidered with symbols whose meanings she now understood all too well, and the silver pendant that marked her as keeper. Liam arrived to escort her to the ritual site, dressed in his own ceremonial attire, dark clothes with silver symbols that mirrored her own. Are you ready? He asked, his eyes searching her face for signs of doubt or fear. Emma nodded, surprised, to realize it was true. Despite everything, the circumstances of her inheritance, the initially unwelcome burden of her role, she felt a strange anticipation for what was to come. The power that had been growing within her these past months yearned for expression, for communion with its source. The people of Marshfield had gathered at the forest's edge, forming a semicircle around an altar stone that had been decorated with autumn fruits, flowers, and sheaves of wheat. Torches provided illumination as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that seemed to reach from the trees toward the assembly. Emma took her place before the altar, feeling the weight of tradition and expectation settle around her. Walter Pruitt stepped forward, looking frail, yet commanding in his role as elder. Since time immemorial, we have honored the Covenant, he intoned, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed gathering. Through feast and famine, war and peace. The Hollow has protected Marshfield, and Marshfield has kept faith with the Hollow. Tonight, at the balancing of the year, we renew our pledge through our keeper, Emma Caldwell. He gestured for Emma to proceed. She stepped forward, suddenly aware of every eye upon her, every breath held in anticipation. The words of the ritual rose to her lips without conscious thought. Ancient phrases in that strange language she somehow understood perfectly now. As she spoke, the air around her began to change, growing dense and charged with energy. The torches flickered, their flames stretching horizontally as if in a strong wind, though the air was still. From the forest came a low, vibrating hum that seemed to resonate in the bones of everyone present. Emma continued the invocation, her voice growing stronger as she felt the presence of the Hollow approaching. The darkness between the trees deepened, coalescing into a tall, wavering shadow that moved to the edge of the gathering, but did not cross the invisible boundary of the ritual space. When the final words had been spoken, Emma lifted the silver knife that rested on the altar and made a small cut across her palm. She let 7 drops of blood fall onto the earth before the altar, sealing the covenant for another year. "The offering is accepted," whispered the voice in her mind, and in the minds of everyone present, judging by their collective gasp. "The covenant endures." Then came words meant for Emma alone. "You have chosen your path, Keeper. The exception you have granted will test your strength and your wisdom. Choose carefully whom you trust, for not all in Marshfield honor the old ways." With true hearts, before she could question this cryptic warning, the shadow receded, the oppressive energy dissipating like mist in sunlight. The townspeople exhaled collectively, then broke into relieved smiles and conversation as Walter announced the beginning of the feast. Tables had been set up nearby, laden with food contributed by every household. Roasted meats, fresh bread, pies made from the autumn harvest, and jugs of cider and wine. The celebration that followed was joyous, almost feverishly so, as if the successful completion of the ritual had lifted a weight from the entire community. Emma moved among them, accepting congratulations and expressions of gratitude with a growing sense of disquiet. The entity's warning echoed in her mind, causing her to study the faces around her with new scrutiny. Most showed genuine relief and happiness, but a few, particularly among the town council members, wore expressions that seemed calculated rather than spontaneous. As the night wore on, Emma found herself increasingly exhausted, the energy required for the ritual taking its toll. Liam noticed her fatigue and guided her to a quiet corner away from the main celebration. "You did well," he said, his pride evident. "Better than anyone expected for your first major ritual." "It wasn't really me," Emma admitted. "It was like I was a channel for something else. I knew exactly what to do, what to say, but the knowledge wasn't mine." "That's how it works," Liam explained. "The covenant flows both ways. The Hollow gains influence in our world through you, but you gain access to its knowledge, its power." Emma frowned. "It warned me about trusting people in Marshfield. Said not everyone honors the old ways with true hearts." Liam's expression grew serious. "There have always been factions within the town. Some see the covenant as a blessing, others as a burden to be endured. And a few," he lowered his voice, "a few believe it could be turned to greater advantage." "What do you mean?" Liam hesitated, then leaned closer. there are those who think the power of the Hollow could be harnessed for more than just protecting one small town, who believe that with the right rituals, the right sacrifices, they could extend its influence beyond our borders. "That's insane," Emma whispered. "The entity is bound to this place. The Covenant restricts it as much as it restricts us." "Yes, but not everyone understands that, or accepts it." Liam's eyes scanned the crowd. "Watch and listen carefully in the coming days. The equinox changes things, opens possibilities, makes some people ambitious." His warning proved prophetic. In the weeks that followed, Emma became aware of subtle divisions within the town. Most residents continued to treat her with the same mixture of respect and cautious friendliness they had shown since her arrival. But a small group, led by town council member Howard Garrick, began to pay her special attention, inviting her to private dinners, engaging her in discussions about the history of the Covenant and its potential applications in the modern world. Howard was a prosperous man by Marshfield standards, owning several properties in town and rumored to have investments beyond its borders. His manner was smooth, his knowledge of the Covenant extensive, but something about his interest in Emma's growing abilities made her uncomfortable. "The Hollow has knowledge beyond our imagining," he said during one such dinner at his expansive home. "Medical cures, technological insights, power that could transform not just Marshfield, but the entire region. All it requires is the right keeper, one willing to expand the Covenant rather than simply maintain it. The Covenant exists as it is, for good reason," Emma replied carefully. "Balance must be maintained." Howard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Balance is important, of course. But what if the original Covenant was too limited? Our ancestors were simple people with simple needs. Surely in this modern age we could negotiate enhancements." "At what cost?" Emma asked. "The Hollow doesn't give without taking." "Everything worthwhile has a price," Howard said smoothly. "The question is whether we're willing to pay it for greater rewards." Emma reported this conversation to Liam later that night as they sat before the fireplace in her living room, the autumn chill having necessitated its first use of the season. "Howard Garrick has been pushing these ideas for years," Liam said, poking at the fire with more force than necessary. "Your great-aunt refused to even discuss them. He sees you as potentially more malleable." "He's wrong," Emma stated firmly. "But I'm worried about how many others share his views." "Enough to be concerning," Liam admitted. "The younger generations especially feel trapped by the Covenant's restrictions. They see the outside world through the internet, through movies and TV, and they want what they can't have. Howard plays on that resentment." Emma thought of Lily, preparing for her departure to Boston. Not all desire for experience beyond Marshfield is wrong. People should be able to learn, to grow, to bring new ideas back. Within limits, Liam cautioned. The Covenant has survived for 2 centuries because it's carefully balanced. Too much outside influence could destabilize it. Or strengthen it, Emma countered. Isolation breeds stagnation. Even the Hollow might benefit from fresh perspectives. Liam looked startled by this suggestion. "You sound like you're considering Howard's proposal." "Not his, but perhaps my own version," Emma said thoughtfully. "The Covenant doesn't have to be static to be honored. Maybe it can evolve without being broken." Before Liam could respond, frantic knocking interrupted them. Emma opened the door to find Tyler's mother, her face streaked with tears. "Ms. Caldwell, please help," she gasped. "Tyler's missing. He went into the woods after school and hasn't come home. It's been hours. Emma felt ice form in her veins. Night had fallen, and the forest was dangerous enough in daylight. Has anyone gone looking for him? My husband and some others. They've been searching since sunset, but... The woman's voice broke. But you know how the woods are. Paths that should be there aren't. Directions that should make sense don't. I'll find him, Emma promised, already reaching for her coat. Liam, I need my pendant. A sentinel. Liam seemed to understand immediately what she intended. Emma, this is dangerous. The Hollow doesn't take kindly to demands, even from its keeper. I'm not going to demand, Emma replied, securing the pendant around her neck. I'm going to negotiate. The forest at night was transformed. Paths that Emma had walked dozens of times seemed to twist and change direction. Landmarks appeared in unexpected places. Shadows moved with purpose rather than following the natural patterns of moonlight and cloud. Yet she proceeded with unwavering determination, guided by an instinct that grew stronger with each step. She knew where she needed to go, the whispering stone where Tyler had encountered the shadow. As she approached the clearing, she sensed the entity's presence, watchful and amused by her midnight journey. Where is the boy? She asked without preamble. The darkness condensed before her, taking on its vaguely humanoid shape. The boy who trespassed before? He has trespassed again. He's a child, Emma said firmly. Children make mistakes. I want him returned safely. The entity's amusement deepened. And what do you offer in exchange, Keeper? The Covenant does not obligate me to return those who wander where they shouldn't. Emma had considered this on her journey through the woods. She knew the entity valued certain things. Blood, of course, but also knowledge, secrets, and commitments. I offer you my blood freely given, she said, drawing a small knife from her pocket. And I offer you knowledge, something you don't yet possess. The shadow wavered, intrigued. What knowledge could you possibly have that I do not? The knowledge of what I intend to do as Keeper, Emma replied. My vision for how the Covenant might evolve under my guidance. You can see many things, but you cannot see the future I imagine unless I share it with you. The entity seemed to consider this. And if this vision displeases me, then you'll know your enemy's plans, Emma said simply. Isn't that valuable? In itself? A cold chuckle brushed against her mind. You are indeed a different keeper than your predecessor. Very well. I accept your offer. Blood and vision in exchange for the child. Emma pricked her finger with the knife and let several drops fall onto the whispering stone. Then she closed her eyes and opened her mind, allowing the entity to see her thoughts, her desire to maintain the Covenant while creating limited, controlled connections with the outside world. Her belief that Marshfield could benefit from new knowledge without sacrificing its relationship with the Hollow. Her commitment to honor the ancient pact while adapting it to modern needs. The shadow sifted through her mind, examining her intentions with cold precision. Ambitious, it finally commented. And dangerous. The Covenant has endured because it is simple. Complications invite failure. Life is complicated, Emma countered. Stagnation is its own kind of death. Even you must evolve or eventually fade. The entity's presence withdrew from her mind, its shape becoming more distinct before her. Perhaps. It has been long since anything truly changed in our arrangement. Your experiment may provide entertainment, if nothing else. It gestured toward a cluster of trees to Emma's right. The boy sleeps there, unharmed. He will remember little of his time in my domain. But remember this, Keeper. Each change to the covenant creates ripples. Some may become waves that cannot be controlled. I have existed for millennia. I can afford to watch your failures. And my successes? Emma asked. The shadow seemed to smile, though it had no visible features. Those too will have consequences. Go now. Take the child home. Emma found Tyler curled at the base of an ancient oak, sleeping peacefully despite the cold ground. She gathered him in her arms, surprised at how light he felt, and carried him back through the forest. The paths that had been so confusing on her entry now straightened obligingly, leading her directly to the edge of the woods where Liam waited anxiously with Tyler's parents and the search party. The boy's return was hailed as a miracle, though Emma deflected questions about how she had found him so easily, when others had searched for hours. Only Liam understood what she had done, and his expression as they walked back to her house was troubled. "You made a bargain," he said when they were alone. "What did you promise?" "Just what I would have done anyway," Emma replied, suddenly exhausted. "To be honest about my intentions for the covenant." Liam's frown deepened. "And what are those intentions exactly?" Emma sighed, sinking onto the couch. "Not what Howard Garrick wants. I'm not looking to expand the Hollow's influence beyond Marshfield, but I don't think complete isolation is sustainable either. The world is changing too fast. Information flows too freely. We need controlled points of contact." "Like sending Lily to college," Liam nodded slowly. "Yes. And maybe bringing in specific outsiders who have skills or knowledge Marshfield needs. Doctors, teachers, technicians, people who could stay temporarily without disrupting the covenant." "The town council will fight you," Liam warned. "Half will think you're going too far. Half not far enough." "I know," Emma acknowledged. "That's why I need to start small. Lily is the test case. If she can leave, learn, and return successfully, it proves the covenant can accommodate limited change." As winter descended on Marshfield, Emma's days fell into a pattern, tending to the needs of the townspeople, studying her great-aunt's notebooks, and planning carefully for the changes she hoped to implement. Lily's departure was scheduled for January, after the winter solstice ritual that would help sustain the covenant through the darkest months of the year. Howard Garrick and his supporters continued their campaign to influence Emma, becoming increasingly direct in their proposals for using the Hollow's power beyond Marshfield's borders. Their vision included creating a network of covenant communities, each with its own keeper subservient to Marshfield, expanding their influence throughout the region. "Think of the possibilities," Howard urged during one particularly tense meeting at the town hall. "Economic power, political influence, the ability to protect not just our town, but all those connected to us." "At what cost?" Emma challenged. "The Hollow is bound to this place, to these people. Stretching that bond too thin would weaken it, not strengthen it." "You underestimate its power," Howard countered, his normally smooth demeanor showing cracks of frustration. "And your own. With the right rituals, the right sacrifices." "I know exactly what sacrifices you're suggesting," Emma interrupted, "and the answer is no. The covenant will evolve on my terms, not yours." The conflict came to a head on the night of the winter solstice. The ritual was to take place at midnight in the clearing with the stone altar, now dusted with the first snow of the season. Emma had spent the day in preparation, fasting and meditating as tradition required, with Liam standing guard outside her bedroom door. As dusk fell, he entered with a cup of the ceremonial tea that would help open her mind to the Hollow's influence. Emma drank it without hesitation, trusting Liam's preparation. But within minutes, a strange heaviness overtook her limbs, her thoughts growing foggy and disjointed. "Liam," she gasped, reaching for him as the room began to spin. "Something's wrong." His face swam before her, expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, Emma. It's for the best. For Marshfield." Betrayal cut through the fog in her mind. "You drugged me? Why?" "The covenant must be preserved in its original form," he said, his voice seeming to come from a great distance. "Howard's plan goes too far, but your changes would weaken us over time." The council decided intervention was necessary. Emma fought to stay conscious, to understand what was happening. The council? What are they planning? "To guide the ritual through you," Liam explained, lifting her now limp form from the bed. "You'll still perform it, but under their direction. The Hollow will receive a different vision tonight, one of stability and tradition." As darkness claimed her, Emma felt a surge of rage and determination. The covenant might control her life, but no one would control her mind, not even her sentinel. She drifted in and out of awareness as she was transported to the ritual site. Fragments of conversation reached her. Howard's satisfied tone. Walter. Pruitt's solemn instructions. Margaret Sherman's concerned questions about the dosage of whatever they had given her. Through it all, Emma struggled to maintain a core of consciousness, focusing on the pendant that still hung around her neck, the physical link to her role as keeper. When midnight approached, she was positioned before the altar, supported by Liam on one side and Howard on the other. The gathered townspeople watched with varying expressions, some troubled, others relieved, most simply accepting what their leaders had decided. Walter began the invocation, then nodded for Emma to continue. Howard leaned close to her ear, whispering the traditional words she was to repeat in her drugged state. But as Emma opened her mouth, a surge of power flowed through her from the pendant, burning away the fog in her mind like sunlight through mist. The Hollow was already there, its presence stronger than she had ever felt it, drawn by the solstice night and the concentrated attention of the entire town. And it was angry. Treachery, it whispered in her mind, the word echoing with cold fury. The covenant is betrayed, the keeper is violated. Emma straightened, shaking off Liam's and Howard's supporting hands. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the clearing, but the words were not those of the traditional ritual. "I call upon the Hollow to witness this breach of trust," she declared, her rage giving her strength. "Those sworn to protect the Keeper have betrayed their oaths. Those bound to honor the covenant have corrupted its purpose." Howard grabbed her arm. "Stop this. You don't know what you're doing." The darkness at the edge of the forest surged forward, no longer contained by the boundaries of the ritual space. Shadow tendrils wrapped around Howard, lifting him from the ground as he screamed in terror. "The punishment for betrayal is mine to determine." The entity's voice resonated through the minds of everyone present. "The covenant demands balance, blood for blood, trust for trust." "No!" Emma cried, surprising herself with her intervention. Despite Howard's betrayal, she couldn't stand by and watch him taken. "Not death. Justice, but not death." The shadow paused. Howard suspended in its grasp, several feet above the ground. "You defend one who would control you?" who would use you as a tool for his ambition. I defend the principle that life is sacred, Emma replied. Punish him, yes, but in a way that teaches rather than destroys. The entity seemed to consider this. What punishment would you suggest, Keeper? Emma looked at Howard's terrified face, then at the other conspirators who had shrunk back from the altar. Let them experience what they sought to control. Give them a taste of the Hollow's true nature, enough to understand its power but not enough to break them completely. A cold amusement emanated from the shadow. An interesting proposal. Very well. Howard and 5 others, including, to Emma's continuing pain, Liam, were enveloped in writhing darkness. Their screams cut through the winter night as the entity showed them visions known only to it. When the shadows finally receded, they collapsed to the ground, shaking and weeping, their eyes wide with the knowledge of whatever they had witnessed. It is done, the entity declared. They will remember, they will understand, and they will not interfere again. It turned its attention fully to Emma. Now, Keeper, the solstice ritual remains unfinished. Will you complete it truly, of your own will? Emma stepped forward, her resolve firm despite the chaos of the night. I will. The ritual that followed was unlike any in Marshfield's history. Emma spoke, from her heart rather than from tradition, renewing the covenant in her own words while establishing her authority as keeper. The Hollow responded with unexpected generosity, accepting her innovations while maintaining the core of the ancient agreement. When dawn broke, Emma stood alone at the edge of the forest, the townspeople having departed to tend to those affected by the entity's punishment. Howard and the others had been carried to their homes, still locked in whatever mental torment the Hollow had inflicted upon them. Only Liam remained unaccounted for, having disappeared into the forest after his ordeal. Emma searched for him throughout the day, calling his name along the paths they had walked together countless times. But the woods remained silent, offering no clue to his whereabouts. By nightfall, she had returned to her house, heartsick and exhausted. She found him sitting on her porch, his face gaunt and his eyes haunted by whatever he had experienced. I thought the Hollow had taken you, Emma said, relief and anger warring within her. It did, in a way, Liam replied, his voice rough. It showed me everything. The true history of the Covenant, the price paid by generations of keepers and sentinels, the consequences of breaking faith. He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. I was wrong, Emma. So terribly wrong. Emma stood before him, unwilling to offer comfort, but unable to turn him away. You drugged me. You conspired against me. You betrayed everything we had built together. I thought I was protecting Marshfield, he whispered. The elders convinced me your changes would eventually destroy the Covenant. That temporary control was better than permanent collapse. And now? Liam shook his head. Now I understand that the Covenant has always been evolving. Each keeper has shaped it in subtle ways. Your great-aunt made changes too, though more cautiously than you proposed. The Hollow, it doesn't fear change. It fears dishonesty, betrayal. Emma considered this. The others involved, will they recover? Eventually, Liam said, but they'll never be the same. The Hollow showed each of us something different, a personal nightmare drawn from our deepest fears. And what did it show you? Emma asked quietly. Liam met her gaze, his eyes filled with pain. It showed me your death, over and over, in different ways, all resulting from my betrayal. And it showed me Marshfield without you, withering, dying, as the covenant collapsed. He reached for her hand. I can't undo what I did, Emma, but I swear on my life, I will never betray you again. Emma wanted to believe him. Despite everything, her feelings for Liam hadn't simply vanished. But trust, once broken, couldn't be instantly restored. You can't be my sentinel anymore, she said finally. That bond is broken. Liam nodded, accepting this as his due. I understand. But, Emma continued, you can work to earn back my trust. Not as my sentinel, but as whatever we might become. A flicker of hope crossed his face. How? By helping me implement the changes I believe Marshfield needs, Emma replied. Starting with Lily's departure next month, the ritual will require a sentinel's assistance, even if not in an official capacity. In the months that followed, Marshfield began its cautious evolution under Emma's guidance. Lily left for Boston, the first sanctioned departure in decades. Howard Garrick and his supporters, humbled by their experience with the Hollow, offered no further resistance to Emma's plans. The town council was restructured to include younger voices alongside the traditional elders. Emma established new rituals to commemorate these changes while honoring the original covenant. The Hollow, perhaps intrigued by the experiment as it had suggested, seemed to approve of the careful balance she maintained between tradition and innovation. Liam worked tirelessly to redeem himself, not only in Emma's eyes, but in the eyes of the town. He became her strongest advocate, helping to implement her vision while respecting the boundaries she had established between them. Slowly, painfully, they rebuilt a connection based on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than ancient obligation. By the time spring returned to Marshfield, bringing with it the equinox that had marked Emma's first full cycle as keeper, much had changed. 3 more young people had been granted permission to leave temporarily for education or training. A doctor from a nearby city had been cautiously introduced to the town, sworn to secrecy, but not to the full covenant, allowing Marshfield access to modern medical care for the first time in generations. Emma stood at the edge of the forest on the equinox morning, watching as the sun rose over the trees. The Hollow's presence was a constant now, a shadow at the edge of her awareness, neither fully benevolent nor truly malicious, simply ancient, powerful, and bound to her as she was bound to it. She had come to understand that the covenant was not a static thing, but a living relationship, constantly negotiated through word and deed. Her role as keeper was not simply to maintain traditions, but to interpret them for a changing world. To find the balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. As if sensing her thoughts, the shadows beneath the trees stirred, forming a familiar pattern that Emma now recognized as acknowledgement. You have survived your first year, Keeper, the entity observed, its mental voice tinged with what might have been approval. Your experiment proceeds. It does, Emma agreed. Change is difficult but necessary, even for beings as old as you. Perhaps, especially for beings as old as I, the entity replied. Stagnation is a kind of death, as you once observed. It has been interesting to experience these adjustments through you. Emma smiled slightly. Is that why you chose the Caldwell women originally? Our capacity for adaptation? A sensation, like cold laughter, brushed her mind. That, and your remarkable stubbornness. The covenant requires a keeper strong enough to resist the hollow when necessary, not merely serve it blindly. Balance in all things. The revelation surprised Emma. All this time, she had assumed the entity valued obedience above all else. The idea that it had deliberately chosen a bloodline capable of standing firm against its demands added a new dimension to her understanding of the covenant. The year turns, the entity continued. New challenges await. Not all changes will be welcomed by those beyond our borders. Be vigilant, Keeper. What you build here may draw unwanted attention. With that warning, the presence receded, leaving Emma to contemplate the path ahead. She had inherited a house, a town, and a covenant she never wanted. But she had made them her own, transforming them even as they transformed her. As she turned back toward Marshfield, Emma caught sight of Liam waiting at the edge of her property, respectful of the private moment between Keeper and Hollow. In his face, she saw the same question that had haunted her since her arrival. Was it possible to find true freedom within the constraints of destiny? The answer, she was beginning to believe, was yes, if one had the courage to define freedom on one's own terms. The hollow whispered from the forest behind her. The town beckoned from the valley below, and Emma Caldwell, reluctant heir to an ancient covenant, walked forward to meet whatever awaited in the year to come, no longer fighting her inheritance, but embracing the power to reshape it. The shadows lengthened as she approached the house that had become her home, stretching like fingers from the forest toward the town. A reminder that in Marshfield, the boundary between the known and the unknowable would always be thin, and that some secrets once learned could never be forgotten, but also that even the oldest bargains could be renegotiated by those brave enough to question tradition without abandoning its core truths. And somewhere deep in the hollow, something ancient and patient continued to watch and wait and whisper.